Yep, we'll go. So it was the outside of my work. So we're talking the way she was over the inside out. That's right. Pretty good, you. We've only had 20 cents right now.
Well, that was all the time.
It was. I said that was Norman's idea. Yeah, that's it. Read on paper, didn't I? What's the third musketeer? That's the third musketeer. You won't bring him out and call him to that head. There's definitely a game. Did you say you were the one? Let me see. Yeah.
Good evening, everyone. I'd like to call to order the June 15th meeting of the Morgan County Board of Commissioners. If you would please stand with me for the pledge and then remain standing for the invocation. I pledge allegiance to the flag
United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Would you please bow? Father God, thank you so much for the privilege and opportunity to gather here freely tonight and to participate in our local representative government. We thank you for both the opportunity that presents, but also the responsibility as well. We pray for your direction as we make decisions tonight, and that ultimately the decisions that are made here will be beneficial not only to you and your kingdom, but also to our taxpayers, citizens, and employees here as well. We ask for a special hedge of protection around the employees that we have that are on the front lines. Obviously, to that, our sheriff's department and the men and women of that agency, but also less obvious in our jail, EMS, and our 911 dispatchers as well. We are living in challenging times, and we pause to think especially for them and their service and sacrifice, and we ask especially for protection on them. We also want to praise you and thank you as well for the beauty that is this county and the opportunity that we have to live here, to play here, to raise our family, to work, and to participate in our community as well. We ask for all of these things in your name that we pray.
Amen.
Our first item of business, we have 3 rezone requests. One on Gaspard Road, one on Pennington Road, and as well as a PUD amendment to our PUD ordinance. Is anyone here to speak on those 3 issues? With the petitioners not being present, I would look for some assistance from planning, or should we consider this at a future meeting, or what would be your advice on moving forward?
The PUD petitioner is here. The Gaspard Pennington Road, some special unanimous recommendations from Planning Commission. It's up to you about the harmony request.
So Ms. Parker brings up the point that Gaspard Road rezone Ag 1 to R1, Pennington Road rezone Ag 1 to R1, that those were a favorable recommendation of the Plan Commission. You'll recall that Ag 1 to Industrial 1, New Harmony Road, first received an unfavorable first received no recommendation. We remanded back to the Plan Commission, which has now come back with an unfavorable recommendation. And then the fourth, I apologize for overlooking you, sir. We do have a representative on the PUD amendment. So what are the wishes of the board with these requests? Floor is open.
Make a motion, we go ahead and approve the Gaspard Road, Ag 1 to R1, as well as Pennington Road, Ag 1 to R1.
We have a motion on the floor to approve the 2 requests, one from Gaspard Road and one from Pennington Road that received a favorable recommendation. Is there a second? I'll second the motion. Any further discussion on those 2 items? All those in favor of the motion signify by stating aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Those 2 rezone requests passed 3-0. I'm assuming there would be interest in tabling the 3rd request.
Make a motion, we go ahead and table the Ag 1 to I-1 on New Harmony Road.
Motion on the floor to table the New Harmony Road request. Is there a second? I'll second the motion. Any further discussion?
I don't think we ought to table it. I think we ought to take action on it.
Understood. All those in favor of the motion to table for consideration later signify by stating aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign.
Aye.
Motion on that will carry 2-1. We will entertain that if the petitioner does come forward, at which time we might end up with a different motion. That leaves us with the PUD amendment at the enclave.
May I?
Yes.
Or I will, what would it be?
Try to be brief. We were unanimously recommended favorable at the Plan Commission as well, so I almost didn't say anything, just let you keep going. I like where you're at. This is the Enclave, our development that with Gradison Land Development. My name's Adam Mears. We're developing currently 148 lots at Heartland Crossing for Ryan Homes. There was to be a senior living center on the corner and of Paddock and County Line Road. That fell through. We are proceeding with taking over that property and simply adding 102 additional lots to the 148 that are currently approved. So that'll take our, I believe it was parcel 2 in the original PUD amendment from 148 to 250 lots. All the same architectural standards. We're not asking for anything different, just simply adding 102 more lots. The subdivision is doing very well. We're really pleased with it and excited to have the opportunity to build more houses here in Morgan County. So I'd be happy to answer any questions anybody might have.
Any questions of the board? And there is a ordinance amendment presented in the meeting packet that reflects basically what you just stated on the change of use of that land. So at this time, I'll open up the floor for a motion.
We're going to make a motion on the PUD amendment for the Enclave at Heartland Crossing as presented.
A motion has been made to approve the ordinance on the PUD as presented. Is there a second? I'll second the motion. Any further discussion? All those in favor of adoption signify by stating aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries unanimously 3-0.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda, we have a grant application from the Morgan County Sheriff.
Evening. My grant application request is for the yearly PACE grant that we apply for, which is Proactive Criminal Enforcement. This is given to us by Nick Sapp, Morgan County Substance Abuse Council. We're asking for, or we're applying for the grant amount of $13,357, and this period will be from July 1st of this year to June 30th of next year. And this is a continuation of the existing PACE team that we have that's dedicated to the enforcement and interception of drug activity in Morgan County. These funds are used to pay overtime wages to officers selected to participate in the program. So that for the folks, thank you.
Any questions?
The grant application.
We have a motion to approve has been made. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor of adoption signify by stating aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries unanimously 3-0.
Thank you.
Thank you. This one, correct? Okay. Next item on the agenda, we have a Coronavirus Relief Fund acceptance certification. Have Josh come up and provide some commentary on this, but this is essentially a letter that we need to sign and execute to start our eligibility process for the CARES Act funding.
Yes, and I believe there was an EMA grant when I skipped over the, no, don't shake your head, no. Okay, sorry. Yes, you nailed it, Ryan. This is something that the commissioners have to approve and adopt if we want to for the CARES Act money as the county entity. And I would add, we need to figure out how we want to move forward. You know, other political subdivisions, townships, libraries can request money from us. We need to, if we're going to allow that process in place, because if for some reason they spend it on something they should, make sure we have something in place to protect ourselves there. But I'll look for some guidance from you on if and how you can do anything there.
So the first issue at hand is the acceptance certification letter. If there aren't any comments on that, I would entertain a motion that get our signature.
So moved.
A motion to approve signature of the acceptance certification. Is there a second? I'll second the motion. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by stating aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. And that motion carries unanimously. On the second issue, just a really, really high level view. Under the CARES Act, we were allotted approximately $2.3 million from the federal government that was then distributed to the state and then distributed to us based on a population schematic. And our total dollar amount was right around $2.3 million. That is not money that we just receive. We are able to draw from that for a very specific list of expenses. Of course, we have to make a direct connection to the COVID-19 pandemic. And the only area where payroll reimbursement is permissible is if it were, we can completely tell a story around that the payroll would not have occurred if it had not been for the virus. And we, of course, it probably would go without saying that we cannot draw down from that amount of money for any lost revenue that the county may have. What Josh highlighted is that other political subdivisions, not under our control per se, but under the layer of county government, are able to petition us for use of the funds. And I'll just state my own personal opinion. Any entity that can lawfully access the money and can document legitimate expenses, I think we should go to bat for. And I know that will be a view that we all share. The potential concern is that because this is not money that we're just handed, we're going to probably expend the dollars ourselves and then receive reimbursement. We would need to make sure that the underlying entity was very thorough in their documentation and that the money that they may receive from us, that of course we would ultimately get reimbursed, that they really are truly following the parameters of the CARES Act. So that's where our due diligence needs to come in. But as far as how we go about doing that, that is largely up to us at the local level to determine. So thoughts on proceeding with that? I know we have had a couple of townships that have already proactively reached out, as well as one of our library districts. Of course, these are entities that have legitimate COVID expenses but are not direct recipients, but can be sub-recipients with our cooperation.
I totally agree, Ryan. I know at least two of the township fire departments have, we didn't know one of the libraries did, but you want some kind of dollar amount limit is what you want to set down each unit? Because I've not seen from either one of the numbers that they're asking, or what they're asking to be reimbursed on. And I'm assuming a lot of that will be a little bit, one of them will be payroll, I'm sure, on that number. The other one wouldn't be payroll. So not being eligible for payroll, that's probably not that one down.
So I would like to maybe suggest we break this into two components. One, what would be the requirements that we would want to put on the stipulation? So the same voucher that we submit, we're going to submit on behalf of these underlying entities, so it'll still have Warren County Commissioner's name on it. And so what is that process we want to make them go through? Is there the ability to recoup, if there's any taxes that pass through us? Do we want to say that we're going to garnish those if that's legally possible if somebody doesn't pay? And it was considered an unqualified expense later. I think that's one category we need to look at. The second category is how much do you want to allow them, and do you want to make sure that we're fully covered before we pass their money, or do you want to just say yes, we'll pass through? That's another entity. And I think we ought to make clear, right now there are two different buckets of money that have been made available to township fire departments in particular to access money. And I think we would probably want some documentation that neither of those work for them before we would pass through the money allotted to us.
So Josh is right.
My only comment is that I think that the required documentation and the guidance that the county is bound to needs to be also the same required documentation guidance that the sub-grantees are bound to, and that there needs to be we need to have our attorney draft a grant applications and agreements that would be executed by both those, the county and the sub-grantee, you know, laying out that those are guidance, those are the requirements of the guidance that they're bound to, and all the legalese in the agreement and so forth. And we can look to the federal government and state government. There already exists some guidance and requirements in sub-grantee situations, and those should be, or I believe those should be our guidance in drafting these legal documents and standards that the county uses.
Are you referring to the, I believe it's the Indiana Finance Authority that approved essentially a claim form that calls for.
We could look to the Indiana Finance Authority for existing guidance that they have in instances of where there are grantees and sub-grantees, to use those as our guidelines.
And the certification form, to Dan's point, is essentially what we're doing underneath the state for the federal. I think we could make sure we're in good standing, but I think this document, in large part, will make.
Large part of the guidance is right here, right in front of us with this. We just need to have those agreements in writing. As far as your methodology of determining the amount of money you're going to, that's why.
So regarding the funding level, I would think that it would be difficult for us to set a limit at this point, just because we don't know the full extent of the need. One, we don't know, this is not a typical disaster that has a fairly defined beginning and a fairly defined recovery period. So these agencies that make application are likely still incurring expenses. Arguably, it's probably diminishing, but there are probably expenses still being incurred. But also, secondly, we don't know the extent of how much of the funds that we've been allocated are going to need to be drawn down from. Our kind of armchair analysis is that from the county's perspective, certainly we're going to have there's a significant amount of money there that we're not even going to be able to draw down from. And so we want to allow these other political subdivisions to have access to that. It's in all of our own best interest, but to say what the limit may be at this point, I think would be too difficult for us to do. We might just want to have the units that are eligible request what they can document and submit that to us, and then we're going to have to make the determination from there. And I would hope, I know it is the federal and state government, and there's lots of bureaucracy involved, but I would hope that the intent of documenting the expenses is just to show good faith effort that there's causation between the expense incurred and the pandemic. I don't know that they're going to come down with a super heavy-handed fist a year from now, but we certainly want to protect the county taxpayers from an expense that we didn't take the effort to document well.
Yes, I agree with that. I think the most stringent requirements seem to be around payroll,
Yes.
And most of the other expenses seem to be a good faith judgment by the county executive.
And it seems to be, I think it's probably true with this, they also said it's an expense that was already anticipated and included in the budget.
This is right.
So where do we go from here?
Ready to make a motion? Here it is. Take a swing at it. make a motion, we go ahead and approve the other units of government, to go ahead and have the same requirements that we do, provide the documents up front. That way we know what the dollar amount is and we can look at that, but make sure that they are following the same guidelines that we're having to follow, that the states and feds have followed down with us. And then, that would be the one, and not actually having a cap on that at all. And then I think there needs to be a separate motion for our legal counsel.
All right, so let me see if I can summarize that. And before, just due to the unusualness of the situation, does the motion that's on the floor give any pause to you, Dan, or legal from a processing standpoint? Are we off to a good start? I mean, essentially right now it's to affirmatively say that these underlying units can make application, use the same documentation that we're required to make, and at this point, send to us what you can justify without a cap, and we'll evaluate that once we have.
And I think both townships already have those.
Yeah, and there will be more. I mean,
Oh,
those
I'm
are
sure.
just, yeah, sure.
I don't see any issue with simply stating and passing that it's our intent to cooperate within this schematic and provide the documentation that it's in the form, of course, knowing that timelines and funds top down will evolve.
So that,
Can I ask one clarifying questions for your motion? Is it your intent that we would make sure that they've provided a good faith effort, that they've pursued other monies available first?
it's one of the questions on the form, I think.
If you've applied, if you have been awarded other money first, I believe, but that doesn't necessarily preclude that other types of funds are available, unless I missed that, which is possible.
Yeah.
For example, we can pursue money through FEMA, or we can pursue it through the CARES Act. We don't have to pick, we're not required to pick one first. And there are specifically two funds that townships can make use of. One of them requires a 25% match, one of them doesn't.
And I know FEMA does require the 25% carry down.
And we can use CARES Act money for that match. So that's my question of clarification. Do we want to make sure that they have pursued any other monies that are accessible to them first?
I think just due to the fluidity of the situation and all the different, there are several different potential vehicles that could be used. I don't know that I want to put that stipulation up front. And I am going to let Ms. Alcala speak, of course, Councilwoman and Township Clerk. Is it related to the motion, or is it beyond that?
It's related to, like, if you go looking for other funds. So there are a lot of other revenue sources in regards to the township. Multiple ones are through FEMA, through SAFER grants. A SAFER grant is to give you staffing, which then you have to maintain afterwards. We don't need to get staffing or maintain it. We need help paying for our overtime costs. We had 8 employees off with COVID-related exposure, and so we had to backfill those positions. So that overtime cost for backfilling those positions, that's what we need to pay back. And that is not available in any other funding source. So that's the only thing. We did receive stimulus to provide for our PPE gear that we needed. That funding was already automatically deposited, so we don't really need help with that. It's just with overtime. And I think that's the same for Brown Township as well.
Yeah, okay, that makes sense too.
Also supplies as well from the 2 townships, Larry and Brown, and
Yeah, and just to be clear, I was trying to speak more generally. Kelly did give me the particulars, but yes, I would agree that in that situation, what's available doesn't actually help them.
Right. Not to complicate it, but I think we're going to want to know that type of thing at some point during the process, but not necessarily at the time of application.
But would seem to me that you would want to direct Josh and Jim to develop an application for this and possibly also, in addition to that, draft a grant agreement between the county and the Lotus Onion.
Yeah, I think that was Kenny's intention with the second,
Okay.
second.
But your, the general motion of that as a board, that you're in agreement to, consider the allocation of the monies received by the county to other local entities to, offset the COVID-19 expenses.
Right.
Yeah.
It was,
Documentation regarding the same guidelines that we got to.
it was to make affirmative our interest in receiving application and assisting those units with getting that money. Second, to make note that there, at this time, wasn't going to be a cap. They just need to request from us what they can document. And that on the point of documentation, they need to document the expense in the same manner that we would have to document it on a first-party basis, essentially. So that motion is on the floor. Is there a second for that motion? I'll second the motion. Any further discussion around that particular set of ideas? Not hearing any. All those in favor of the motion signify by stating aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 3-0. And then Mr. Hale has in mind a second motion that I think speaks to Dan's point.
Yep. Make a motion that we go ahead and have Jim and Josh work together, putting up application for them to fill out and making sure that that grant application is following the state and federal guidelines.
We have a motion on the floor to delegate to Josh and to Jim, legal counsel, the creation of an application so that these political subdivisions can pursue funding. Is there a second? I'll second the motion. Any further discussion? My only contribution would be this, just to, and I know you gentlemen will do it, but consider just referencing documentation that's already pretty widely accepted and available. All those in favor of adopting the motion signify by stating aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 3-0. So we kind of got through all of that. Is that all the direction that we need to take at the moment on the CARES Act funding?
Yes, I believe that's accurate.
Okay, very good, thank you.
And just so you all know, as we'll start to collect these invoices that aren't both ours, they come from us. We'll work with EMA to sit down with the different department heads and lay all these out, because we have to make sure we have all the invoices. We have to have a specific request for each different invoice. We have to number them, and so we'll lay a process out to make sure we get that appropriate.
Makes sense, thank you very much.
Thanks, Josh.
Next item on the agenda is a perfection group agreement. This is actually one of our COVID-related expenses on UV sanitation and other specific work at the coroner's office.
Okay, we'll take those in turn. I will start with the UV sanitation. So this was something that has been appropriated by the council. So if you all are comfortable moving forward, they have allowed the money to be spent. This is something that I do anticipate if we move forward being paid for from the CARES Act. I can't say that with certainty, but this would be an attempt to put within our ventilation systems UV light and ionization, which can kill bacteria and microbes and provide a cleaner air environment for our facilities. We initially laid out around $100,000, it was $102,000. And working with Perfection Group, we identified our heat pumps and different things that had common air spaces, so that we didn't have to provide the equipment in all of our systems and still treat the environment well. I reached out to Dr. Broderick because I wasn't necessarily convinced it's something we should do, nor was he initially, but he got into the medical research to see if this was something that was of value. And he said, yes, I actually do think this is something that would be worthwhile and would be beneficial both now and on an ongoing capacity. Just so you know, LED, they do have an anticipated lifespan of 4 to 5 years, and so there would be a future cost at some point. But I just want you to know that information upfront.
And due to Perfection and others here making a good assessment of our needs, the cost of that is less than half of what we had initially.
It would be down to, right now, $43,911 is what it came in at.
Any questions or discussion on this?
Motion to approve the project.
Motion to approve the agreement as presented has been made. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor of adoption signify by stating aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 3-0.
Okay, the next thing, this came up as part of COVID. Annette inquired for HIPAA filtration for our autopsy room. We found out we can't do that. We don't have a current system that allows us to be in compliance for the autopsy room to meet code. So right now, what Perfection Group did, because they had come down, they looked at the building, because they were going to help us get it compliant, so that, and we're making sure we're treating the air before we release it, those types of things. They said it can't be done. We have some air scrubbers that are put in place as we draw air into and out of the building. You have a letter that gives some things to consider from Perfection Group. The systems that we have in place right now is a Band-Aid at best, and as the air gets too hot outside or too cold, it allows us to not be able to keep up with conditioning the air. It is on a temporary basis treating it. I provided you with an invoice of what we're paying to Sunbelt Rentals on a monthly basis for right now, and that is $2,712. And so my question to you all is, do you want us to pursue working with Perfection Group to get a code compliant HVAC system for our autopsy room and pursue funding for COVID, or how would you like me to, I guess, proceed? And we have checked with Duke, we can get 3-phase power there pretty easily, so we have the ability to get the type of commercial unit we need.
You got a dollar amount, what is it?
I have
that 3-phase yet?
No, he said actually it would be free to get it to us because we have one so close. The only thing we would have to pay for is someone to put in the conduit from the pole to set our meter. I'm just looking for some direction from you on what you would like to see.
I'd make a motion that we work toward becoming compliant in the coroner's building and autopsy room.
The motion on the floor to pursue further discussion of this project for compliance issues. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor of adoption signify by stating aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. And motion on that carries 3-0 as well.
Do you all have an issue, if we put in an appropriation request, with some rough budgetary numbers that then Perfection Group has time to hone in, are you all happy for us to do that, or do you want to wait until we get everything nailed in before we go back to the council and ask for the appropriation?
You know, July typically it has to be this week.
So you're talking about, Josh, having a placeholder appropriation
Yeah, I was
request?
just gonna ask them for a rough idea that we can always back down from, but I didn't want to move more quickly than you all comfortable with.
Just my personal opinion, if Perfection Group can maybe give you some type of an indication of what the ballpark would even be, and maybe go forward with that just so that we can keep moving. Is that okay?
First of July to get that nailed down, and then it's your July meeting, which will be the morning of the ninth council meeting. You guys get back to that one.
The reduction.
Right. Just make sure make sure Perfection estimates it on the high side. But not too strict.
But not so high. That's a fine art.
Great, thank you for the clarification.
NIMBO IP contract. I think we're primarily in the legalese stage on that one.
Yes and no. Jim, you can speak to the contract, and it's substantially similar to the one we had before. But we are ready at the Reporter Times building to get them moving so that we will be ready with phones when the prosecutor's office moves. So this contract and quote are here for you. I'm sure Jim can answer any questions you have.
Excuse me, I viewed it as, very similar to prior, I don't really see the issue.
I believe the only thing we're gonna do is cross out Marion County and put Monroe County as you guys did in the first instance. You did a 36-month term with dispatch. We can do 18, or we can mirror what we've already done. The monthly expense is $414 per month. There are one-time costs associated with this, and you've got that all laid out for you. I just want to make sure you're aware of all that.
Questions of Josh or Jim on this? Scott Hamilton has of course been very involved as well and is here. If there are questions of him also.
Scott may want to share what their experience, because they're actually up and running now.
We had some delays with the COVID, getting things rolling, but once it got, they're a good company so far, very easy to work with. We're happy. We've had one little glitch. We worked through that pretty quickly. The call volume, I've been querying people. If I talk to somebody on the phone from my office phone, I've been, asking, how does this sound? How does my voice sound? How does, and the sound quality is unbelievable compared to what we've got now. I also have now on my phone, my cell phone, a soft phone. So I can receive, I'm not tied to my office receiving calls. I can be on the dispatch floor and my cell phone will ring on their app. I can also be away from the office, going to a meeting, or if I'm at home, I can make and receive calls that are coming to my office phone, or I can make calls from it doesn't look like they're coming from my office phone. It doesn't look like it's coming from my cell phone. It is a really nice system. I'm very happy with it so far.
Excellent. Please, Mike. Oh. That was one person in favor, at least.
Forthcoming.
We have a motion on the floor to approve the agreement in its most present form. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any further discussion? Do we need to make a determination on the contract length?
Should be the 36-2. You're comfortable with the 36-month term instead of the 18, right, like 911 has for?
Yeah.
So that motion is made and seconded. Any continued further discussion? All those in favor of adopting, approving the contract, please signify by stating aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 3-0. Anything further on that? All right. We'll move into our vacation policy ordinance. This is a second reading of essentially a one-time ordinance that recognizes that due to the COVID-19 pandemic and not only the additional leave time that was available to employees, but also just the change in work schedules and cancellations and other things that had to occur. We did not want employees to be penalized for losing otherwise lawfully accrued vacation time. So this grants a one-time grace period in 2021 for carryover of additional already earned paid time, and then of course it would expire at the end of 2021.
Motion approved.
Motion to approve on second reading is made. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor of adoption signify by stating aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 3-0 on a second reading. Next on the agenda, we have an enterprise lease for the Morgan County Coroner's Office.
I will present this on behalf of Annette. So as you all are aware, we make use of enterprise fleet management now. Annette had asked the council last year, is my understanding, and they told her to come back for additional appropriation when she was ready. She has done that and has been approved. She has worked with Enterprise to make sure and get a truck that meets her department's needs. As such, she's able to get off-road, which her van currently can't do. It's a truck so that the bodies will not be in the main cab with her or whoever's driving it. It's got all the rollout equipment, a bed, and locker storage, and all those things. So this is the contract that we would need to execute if you guys are in support of her updating that equipment. As you probably remember, we treat this like a lease, although it isn't. It is technically one because we don't take the book value to zero. We do own this equipment. We will sell this equipment when we're ready to move on. We aren't be penalized because it's not a true lease, I guess.
Any questions of Josh on the enterprise lease for the Morgan County Coroner?
And I will clarify what she had hoped, that there was a vehicle already in stock. She had been working with Ford dealership out of Bloomington. I believe Enterprise and that dealership have entered into an agreement together so that we can make use of that vendor moving forward. They did not have one on the premise. So just like Enterprise was going to do it, it's to be ordered, and so this will not come until later in the year.
Motion to approve the vehicle.
We have a motion to approve the execution of the enterprise lease. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor of adoption signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 3-0. Next item on the agenda is a discussion of the rainy day fund ordinance.
Now, I apologize, in your packet you have the supporting code sections that are just there for reference. Somewhere along the line, must not, didn't get it all the way there. So it is my understanding from Dan's intent, Dan, you can correct me, we simply have added a statement to our current ordinance, and this is tonight's discussion whether you want to take action or come back with a formal draft. But section 3 of our current rainy day fund policy would be added. You have that right at the top of your pages. And it would say reimbursement from grant proceeds for monies appropriated and spent from the rainy day fund in accordance with proper approvals from the fiscal body of the county. That would be a thing that we could use rainy day to reimburse the rainy day fund. Dan and I haven't been able to speak, so I don't know if that meets the intent of what he is looking for, or if there's something more that needs to be added.
My thoughts are that it would be best for us, since due to the fact that most, if not all, of our COVID expenses are going to be expended from the rainy day fund because that's from which the county council has appropriated the money. And, you know, our expectation is that we're going to get reimbursements from a variety of sources of those expenses. And typically, the general rule is that the reimbursements are received back to the fund from which the original expense occurred. And since our language for our rainy day fund doesn't specify that reimbursements received would be an eligible receipt for the rainy day fund, I thought to button things up more tightly, that we just add that in the language of the rainy day fund ordinance. It's probably not necessary, but you know, you never know when an auditor might, you know, come along and say, you don't have authorization to put that money in the funds.
That's the auditors.
Yeah.
And Dan, I don't know that this is urgent, so if you or Jim want to make sure you have time to review it, that's completely fine. I just wanted to get the conversation started and make sure everything met your needs.
I had reviewed the addition previously, but was unaware that context, I think, said it seems, you know, pretty straightforward to me, and I understand, you know, anytime we can provide some additional clarity to attorneys and auditors, it's what they can, so I'm happy either way.
that'll be plenty of time, since I don't expect us to start getting any reimbursements anytime soon.
So, we wanting to have a more formal draft than this to take action on, or is the intent of this sufficient enough to take action on and put on paper at a later date?
I think it's the commissioner's preference. I could, probably we could have a short template with that as the attachment, to modify the existing ordinance this evening, and let's say we're going to proceed, or we could, have it on the agenda in a little bit more formal manner.
I think that we need an actual ordinance, amended ordinance, drafted prepared for signature.
Especially given the fact that there's been numerous executive orders from the State Board of Accounts to give a certain amount of leniency regarding this situation, but probably more importantly than that, it's not as if we're going to be dealing with a grant reimbursement anytime in the next couple of weeks.
No. We are shocked.
So what I would look for then is a motion that we include this language in our rainy day fund ordinance, but that we have a draft of that to take official action on in our first meeting in July. If that is pleasing to the board.
So move.
That motion has been made. Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor of that motion, which would bring an ordinance to our desk for the first meeting in January, please signify by stating aye.
Aye.
All right. Can we do January over? I don't think anybody wants to do that. Motion carries 3-0.
Skip March, April.
Not sure who's that was. Next on the agenda is a property sale discussion.
What brought this up, I got a call in Elvis a week or so ago. We own a piece of property out there, Lakehart. It's got a building on it, but we do not use it. They're interested in buying it. I suppose if we sold it, we'd have to advertise and then take bids on it. Personally, I think I'd just soon keep it. The highway might find a use for it at some point.
So what, if anything, is being done with it at the time? There's a structure on it, is there not? But we're not using it in any way.
I called the highway the other day, and they do not use it for anything at this time.
I would say they didn't even really know about a problem. There's
Sure.
there might be one or two of them that remember it and know about that out there, but I mean, most of them probably didn't even realize we had it out there.
What are your thoughts then on as far as hanging on to it or considering at least pursuing a sale?
I know they talked to me about it over the years, and I always told them they needed to call the commissioners, and I haven't talked to anybody about it in the last couple of years. If it's being utilized and we're utilizing it, I don't have a problem keeping it, but if it's just sitting there and it's not on the tax road, I wouldn't be opposed to getting rid of it. Just would really want to think about it. I mean, we've had this since 99, 2000, well, we got, it's been quite a while.
Probably before that. We'd have to go through appraisal process and all this other stuff, and might end up costing more than we would get out of it. I'd make a motion that we just keep it.
Just take no action. Is There's a motion on the floor to not pursue any intent to sell the property in question on Lake Hart. Is there a second for that motion?
One question before I do that.
Well, there's a motion on the floor, so. All right, I will second the motion, largely from the standpoint that if we're going to look at selling land, we probably should do it in a more comprehensive basis instead of just a one parcel basis at this point. Any questions on the motion?
My only question would be,
Or
I don't
comments?
have a problem supporting this as long as, it's just not indefinite. I think we need to look at it. Other properties the county's got, we might need to look at, possibly put back on the tax roll. That's my only question. I just didn't want to see it locked in, no discussion at a later date. That's all that.
I might lean a little on Jim in that regard, but my suspicion would be that an action taken today to not pursue any other discussion on a sale would not bar the future boards of commissioners from discussing it at a later time.
Correct. Or even this one.
So I think the spirit of it is just simply the ad hoc request, the one-off request. That we're not going to pursue, a one-off consideration of the sale at this point in time. Okay. So that motion is made and seconded. All those in favor of adopting the motion signify by stating aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 3-0 to take no further action on discussing the sale of that property at this time. Moving on to old business, there's a couple of pending items that have been tabled. I'm going to run through those to see if there's anything further that we're ready to do at this time. Appointment to the Monroe Township Fire District, as well as the Morgan County Regional Sewer District Board. To my knowledge, we're not ready to take action.
I will give you an update on the fire district board.
Sure.
Because I just got a text back on that a minute ago. I've been working with Mike Wagner, and he's chair of that fire district board over there. Mike has been hitting the bushes, I've been hitting the bushes. Up to this point, we got one gentleman that actually is very interested. Sounds like would be a great candidate. Mike's gonna get back with him tomorrow. And then I actually approached another gentleman, and he actually just texted me back during the earlier meeting. And he first told me no, absolutely not, but then he's willing to throw his name in the hat. I would give Mike respect. I wanna just bring it back up next meeting and see, cause Mike, we've both been working together on this, and I just found out this one, so. Sounds like we're at least gonna have one name to bring, and just further notice, we're gonna have another, Mr. Burling's gonna be stepping down at the end of this year. He's already let us know he's not willing to stay years of service, so I understand that. So it sounds like we might be doing another one, but it sounds like Mr. Burling will wait till the end of the year somewhere.
Okay. So
No action tonight on that.
decent possibility of having a candidate for our next meeting.
Yeah, we should have
Okay.
a candidate.
And that same applies on the regional sewer district. Quite possible that we would have a candidate to consider at our first meeting in July. But that board does not meet again until July 9th. So we're not holding them up, although we do want to take action on that as quick as we can. Mass gathering ordinance.
Well, Leah, I think I should have something submitted for you all to review and consider prior to the next meeting. I want to talk to Sheriff Myers and Johnson, something that should be ready.
Very good. NDOT road transfer agreement.
Just real quick, we have reached out to them, we've talked to them, and they are planning on getting calendars together. The problem is between commissioner vacations, their vacations, they're getting a very tough time of getting a lot of people in the group together. So it looks like it could be mid to late July before we actually have a meeting. It sounds like it's going to be virtual. as soon as we can get some dates together, we're going to push them out to the commissioners and try to get that together for a group meeting. So discuss that.
Just one point, well, I'll talk about that later, but it's all right, we can get that scheduled. Thank you, Tony. That brings us to the locution systems agreement, Mr. Scott Hamilton.
Good evening. I sent a memo included with this agreement. This is, the money's been appropriated by the county council. Actually, it's going to come in significantly lower than what we had appropriated due to the fact that we were able to secure an agreement or get a formal agreement yet, but we've been discussing with Johnson County about using their locution server as opposed to us purchasing our own server. And some other things that it's just getting in lower, which is good. Always good to it's been lower, but that will help out with some things. Eventually, we will probably need to have Mr. Wisco and Johnson County's legal department get together on some type of interlocal agreement. With this, if you choose to go forward with this project, this will help tremendously, especially with I-69 coming up, reducing our staffing needs. I don't feel like we'll be in a position to be asking for additional staffing. I think we can realize some efficiencies in our operations that will help us along. If anybody's got any questions about what locution is and what it does, I can try to give you a little rundown on it.
Any questions of Scott?
One other thing that I mentioned in my memo was, somebody will have to check the legalities of this and see if we want to do it. Since we are incurring savings, and Johnson County is doing us a tremendous favor in this, we'd like to, plus with this Harrison Township, Burgersville situation, this will help there. But we're going to establish a CAD academy with Johnson County, and we've already started the process to purchase, because we're also going to do this with Mooresville, start the purchase process with the CAD to CAD interface for our spelling system, but the other entities, Johnson County, Mooresville, would need it for their entities. And since they brought this little server to the table and saved us a tremendous amount of money, I feel like it would be a good gesture on our part to see if we can purchase the CAD to CAD link for Johnson County for their cooperation in this matter. And the CAD to CAD, basically, help me along, I tend to talk a little on the technical side, and I apologize. The CAD to CAD, basically what it's going to do is, when we enter into a call, and let's say Johnson County, some of Johnson County's apparatus is going to be used in that call, especially in the Barbersville area, if it's a mutual aid assistance situation, it's going to notify their CAD that, hey, we're going to be requesting something for your equipment. We'll be able to see if that equipment's available, and basically they will automate the dispatch on their side instead of us having to call them and request stuff. It will automatically transfer to them, and they will be able to dispatch, or it will automatically activate their locution server to dispatch that equipment. It will save minutes of time, phone calls, things like that. And also, since we're using Johnson County kind of as a backup, that will be a big help in that realm too also.
So would that link go to all of our dispatch consoles, or would it go to one?
No, it will be system-wide to Spelman. Yeah, it will not affect. It will have a little bit of effect on the mobile data terminals. It just depends on how we set it up. We'll probably just set it up for the units that are assigned to that call instead of everything, so you're not getting bombarded with information. And we can kind of pick and choose how we want that information displayed. And so, because they won't want to see a theft report in Morgantown, but they will want to see a fire run that potentially is going to request their assistance.
Makes sense to me. So Do you have an estimated cost on what that would cost, and would you be pursuing an additional appropriation or trying to work that into a budget for next year?
I've got the funds, since we've had savings in this year's from what's appropriated, because my funds were appropriated in computer equipment, computer software, and radio equipment. There will be savings in all three of those categories because of this, savings with Johnson County. I would probably just utilize the funds that are already there this year for that, and it's about $10,000.
So, then that would be the purpose of the interlocal, or the MOU or something to
That and the use of their locution server and anything that's tied in with that. We want to take really good pains to make sure that we're not going to affect, and locution's been really good about looking at this data to make sure that we're not going to slow their process down, slow their server down, or cause them any heartache or grief. That's the last thing we want to do, but we want to make this thing work as seamlessly as possible. And Locution says they have done this in multiple agencies before, and they have a good track record with it working fine. So, just a matter of us moving our road database into their Locution server. This is a long process. We have to teach Locution to pronounce certain road names and things like that. I mean, most of them, like Main Street and Poplar and things like that, may be easy for it to, because those are common, but we have some oddball names like Mahaleysville, Clayton Trail, that we'll have to teach it to pronounce, and even like Peregrine Road. Like Peregrine Road, our pronunciation of Peregrine is a little different than probably the dictionary pronunciation of Peregrine.
Motion to approve the locution agreement.
We have a motion on the floor to approve the locution agreement as presented here. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. And then Mr. Hamilton had the second request of proceeding with the exchange of consideration with Johnson County. Again, that is in his budget already, not under that name per se, but the funds are available. Do we wish to give him direction to proceed with that?
So moved.
Motion to approve has been made. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 3-0 on that as well.
Thank you.
Thank you, Scott. Anything further?
I think the others got taken. They're not ready yet.
Okay, all right, thank you. So then we will move on to the EMS. Good evening, Donnie.
Good evening, how are you?
Good, sir. How about yourself?
I'm doing well, thank you. I was here first meeting of the month to discuss the SOGs and some revisions to current SOG for vacation. Wanted to see if you guys have had any question, any time to look over that.
I'll jump out there on that. The biggest question I have, and I apologize for not asking you before,
Oh, you're fine.
but I raced in here today. Certainly, we've always held, I think, a pretty consistent view that while you work for the commissioners, we do not pretend to understand how to best run your organization, and we want you to be autonomous in doing that. So certainly want to hear recommendations on different policies and procedures, but we also don't want them to conflict with personnel policies or cause any concern with HR on administering them. So that's really my question is, have you had a chance to discuss those with HR?
Yes, all these have been placed before HR, and they were given a thumbs up from Doree especially with vacation SOG where it's concerned, the onboarding, and hiring SOG, she looked over that thoroughly. And when it comes to certain aspects of the onboarding process, it does refer to the HR process where she would need the I-9 and those different credentials that she would need from an HR standpoint. So it's kind of us creating a SOG that works in conjunction with what we put in place.
Thank you, Donnie. I mean, what you laid out made sense to me. I just wanted to make sure that that had been done, and I assumed that it had, but.
Good question.
And you're referring specifically to the vacation and onboarding and not so much on the performance improvement component?
But even the performance improvement, every SOG that I've put forward, whether it's a revision or a new SOG based on a policy that we want to incorporate into our existing structure is pushed through HR. I wouldn't say pushed through, but it's placed on her desk so that she has an opportunity to look at it thoroughly and give us her feedback, which I appreciate because it helps us with the process.
Donnie, I thought it looked really good. The only thing I was just wondering, how much of a change is it from time off vacation that you already had? Because I see that was the biggest change probably, it looks like.
Really, what it does is it helps streamline the process for us. It takes a lot of the legal aspects of time off, whether the USERA, if we end up with somebody who's in here who has military requirements that they have to maintain. It speaks to that first and foremost right out of the gate. And as far as selection of vacation, looking at it from the standpoint of what we do, making sure that the positions are covered so that we know far enough in advance to get those covered. It speaks to that. And it allocates a process of using factors that the person is not in control over. The month and day you're born, not the year. It doesn't make any difference how old you are, but the month and the date would factor in if we get somebody who had the same seniority. And if by some chance they were born on the same day, then it would go back to the last name. And those are all things that you can find in military policies as well.
It's gonna make whoever's in on your scheduling a lot easier with this.
Well, that's one of the things we would like to do. We sure would. And we had anticipated this being an issue once we started seeing folks, getting their vacations and things starting to grow. So yeah, it's been one of those that it's been through. It's one of the first things we went to Doree with once we got her on board. She felt comfortable with with us. So
Thank you, Doree. She laughed.
yeah, she's been great to work with, by the way.
Thank you. Any further questions or discussion? If there aren't additional questions, entertain a motion.
Go ahead and move on the EMS SOGs as presented, as well as the performance improvement plan that's been presented as well.
We have a motion on the floor to approve the SOGs as well as the PIP or performance improvement plan as presented. Is there a second? I'll second the motion. Any further discussion? All those in favor of adoption signify by stating aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion on that carries 3-0.
Thank you.
Thank you, Donnie. Anything further? Okay. All right. Thank you very much. Next on our agenda, we have an agreement with Ultimate Technologies. This is another contract that has been appropriated by the council, if memory serves me correctly. And we'll have Josh go over some of the specifics of that, because it's not only audiovisual improvements for streaming, but also some other more broad technology improvements as well.
Yes, thank you. So you are correct. This has been appropriated by the council, and in hopes that it would come before you all. This would be something you're comfortable with. This was born out of COVID-19. We realized, through our GoTo meeting, we're not able to provide the type of experience that we would like to our citizens, to make sure that we continue to provide an open and transparent government. And so what this would do is put cameras, there would be 2 cameras that would be part of the system. It would upgrade our mixer to be compatible with the new equipment and allow us to live stream our meetings with a nice video feed from a bird's eye view of all of you. It would just enhance our experience and allow the microphones to feed directly into the video. So if we have to go back to online meetings again, you're not trying to pick up sound from the speaker and the microphone. These are all things to help our experience, as you alluded to. There was a project you guys did in the past. The mixer that we would have needed for this project wasn't on the market at the time. And so this would be upgrading that mixer as well. And I will add, just the other day, the mixer made a flash and just stopped working for a couple days. I'm not sure why it came back on today, but time is ticking on that mixer, evidently. So I think this is more time than we realized.
Definitely agree. Any other, or any questions of the Ultimate Technologies proposal, which of course is both equipment and labor on installation of all of the components?
Yeah, I will say that me and Deb and Joel went up to see the product used and demonstrated in the actual office facility. I think it's going to be a good product, and we did push pretty hard to get the prices down. This is about 10% lower than what we started at, but there's a lot of actual engineering costs that are going to be required.
Motion to approve the agreement.
We have a motion on the floor to approve the agreement. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor of adoption signify by stating aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 3-0. Thank you, Josh. Next up, we have minutes from the April 27th joint meeting between the Morgan County Commissioners and the Johnson County Commissioners. There are 2 sewer board members here, so for their benefit, I want to state that the minutes are pretty much limited to the fact that we talked about a partnership but did not have documentation in advance of the meeting, and so that we would continue to have a discussion with them at a later date. That has been signed by all 3 commissioners in Johnson County, and that needs our approval as well.
So moved.
Motion to approve has been made. Is there a second? I'll second the motion. Any further discussion? All those in favor of adoption signify by stating aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 3-0. Move into some updates on the Reporter Times building. We're kind of ending the end of that project, hopefully.
Yes, I think there's some light at the end of the tunnel. We've been told that there will be a hard completion date of July 1st. And so in coordination with the prosecutor's office, we are anticipating them to begin moving at the end of July, start of August, depending on how their schedules work, which is one reason getting info rolling was important today. So prices, we have not paid for any more invoices since our last meeting. So the only thing that's changed on the summary sheet is the date. There are 2 more change orders, one for $234. We had previously run some Ethernet cables to make sure we had cameras in the lobbies, and working with Jail Commander Dave Rogers, we decided we ought to put 2 cameras on the exterior of the building to provide coverage around the facility as well. So that's to get the extra Ethernet line where it needs to go. And then there is a second change order for MJ Stucco to work on finishing the front of the building. And I believe, can you correct me if I'm wrong, there might be 1 more related to the front of the building?
Should be our last one.
And the second one was in the total of $3,600.
So the expense tracking is just an update. That is the spreadsheet. The 2 changes would need approval, so entertain a motion on those 2 items that Josh just outlined.
Make a motion to go ahead and approve the 2 changes, with Midwest Electric being one in the amount of $234, the other one being M&J LLC, Stucco in the total amount of $3,600.
Motion on the floor to approve both change orders, one to Midwest Electric and one to M&J Stucco. Is there a second? I'll second the motion. Any further discussion? All those in favor of adoption signify by stating aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 3-0. Moving into other business, we have two requests to use space outside of the courthouse. One of them is from the Fall Foliage Board of Directors. A consistent request, of course, within many years in the past. They state in their letter that a certificate of insurance will be provided prior to the event. And then we have a second request as well for use specifically of the gazebo. That's on behalf of Rediscover Historic Martinsville. And unless I missed it, doesn't have an end date, but would be the third Thursday of the month. I'm assuming throughout the summer. So we have those two requests to consider. And I should note too that Rediscover completed the application and the narrative, and then with Fall Foliage we have a letter. Any discussion on those events or potential approval together or separately?
Go ahead and make a motion to approve both of them as presented, one being the letter, the other one being the application.
We have a motion on the floor to approve both events, the Fall Foliage Festival as well as the request from Rediscover Historic Martinsville. Is there a second? I'll second the motion. Any further comments or discussion? We just ask that we follow up with both on the liability insurance and the completed application, but as far as the dates and times, it's good with me. Any other discussion? All those in favor of the motion signify by stating aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 3-0. We have an incident claim on vehicle damage. Have we submitted to insurance? And it was denied. So we have an incident claim on a vehicle that sustained damage on a county road, allegedly from a county-related project. It has been denied by the insurance carrier. Don't want to speak for them, but typically there is a declination of liability when an event happens for the first time. The argument is typically that can we be held liable for something that we did not yet know about, and then once a subsequent damage occurs on after that, and we've not taken any action to rectify it, that is typically when they find that we are in fact liable. So we've got a decision to make on this particular one if we're going to approve reimbursement or make a declination.
I did call the highway department to try and get some information. One of the things that they relayed was that it was a surface layer only that hadn't been filled in. They said it should not have been more than an inch to an inch and a half deep, and that signage was posted for being driving slow. They felt very strongly that this was not something that should have happened if somebody was driving at the signage limit.
Thank you, Josh. And the letter does acknowledge that they did see signage, that there was a flagger ahead. The letter goes on to state, though, that they did not see any flaggers, but did see the sign.
In my conversation with the highway, they felt like it was at least 3 inches deep, rather than the insurance claim will be its half.
Well, I can't really can't make a motion, but I mean, my vote will be a declination, largely because we decline these almost every time they come forward. If the insurance company doesn't pay them, and finds that we don't have liability, we typically follow suit. It's a rare occurrence from my recollection that we deviate from that. Any further discussion? Not hearing any, I'd entertain a motion on the incident claim.
I'll make a motion that we approve the May 18th and June 1st minutes.
I will second that
All right. You know, it's a good thing this is like live TV too. You don't have to have cable anymore. All right, so there's a motion on the floor to approve the minutes of May 18 and June 1st has been made and seconded. Any further discussion on the minutes? All those in favor of adoption signify by stating aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. And despite the levity, I think we have to take some degree of action on the incident claim.
The only thing I can do would be talk to travelers again.
I mean, I don't have a problem with there being some steps taken to get further information. I just, when the insurance company denies and these get sent in, I would say almost 9 times out of 10, we follow suit. So. We have a claimant that has signed a claim report requesting compensation for damages and has submitted supporting documentation to include invoices and receipts of repair. We have a declination from an insurance company, so we need to take some type of action, whether it's to investigate the claim further or to approve or deny.
Motion to investigate further.
A motion on the floor to look into the incident further and bring back up at a later date has been made. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Motion's been seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor of continuing investigation and looking at a later date, please signify by stating aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Aye. Motion carries 2-1. We can have some discussion on how we go about investigating it further, but at least at this time we've got some direction on doing that. And the minutes have been approved, which brings us down to a couple of closing items. One, we have a letter for granting permission to use the parks. This is to the Indiana Astronomical Society and consistent with letters that have been granted for approval in the past. Do we have an agreement or a motion to approve the signature of this letter and forwarding it on for their use?
So moved.
Motion to approve the letter to the IAS is made. Is there a second? I'll second the motion. Any further discussion? All those in favor of adoption signify by stating aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. And then I've been made aware of a couple of other items. I could turn it over to Commissioner Hale for a discussion of a request from FEMA.
We got a request for additional information from FEMA last week. One of the first requests is in regard, they're asking NDOT. NDOT is working on that. I had a meeting with them last week, and they are working on that as far as coming up with their answer. On number 2, that is pertinent to us, and we are being asked to answer that. I read over this, and I made Jim aware of this, give him a copy of the C-44 CFR 80.19B, and myself, I'm not willing to go ahead and transfer any of the property, and my reasons are, we lose control of the deed restrictions that we had to put on the property whenever we use FEMA dollars to buy it. We go ahead and transfer a portion of it or all of it. That's why I'm totally against it. I did talk to Homeland Security and asked if anybody else in the state had ever done this, and they says, no, you can, but nobody has, and they would recommend against it. So I would be willing to make a motion. We go ahead and do the letter. NDOT is gonna have their letter ready for tomorrow, and I was hoping we'd go ahead and do it as well. I know Deb's already started to draft on that, but go ahead and make a motion that we go ahead and state that we are not gonna be transferring any portion of this property, and we're gonna retain possession of both parcels completely.
Is that in the form of a motion?
Yes.
So the motion has been made to that Commissioner Hale. We worked with Deb early on drafting this letter, which is a response to FEMA, specifically regarding the 2 deed restricted parcels that Commissioner Hale discussed. Is there a second? I'll second the motion. Any further discussion? All those in favor of adoption signify by stating aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion on that carries 3-0. And then Mr. Tony Hinkle has a couple of items to update us on.
So I have 3 quick items. I apologize for not getting on the agenda. These will be pretty quick and brief. The large packet in front of you, that is a request for work. That is an advertisement I want to put out for Cramertown, Boyles, and Townsend Road. It did take me an extensive period of time, basically because I've kind of built that one from scratch. I think the previous long advertisement we've seen has been about 3 pages by the predecessor. This one's about 67. So there are a few corrections. I'm actually sending these out to get peer reviewed by some other county engineers. There were a couple of corrections that I got today that I am going to put in. But in the next couple of days, I would like to put this out for advertisement. This will be opened then, bid opening on the June 20th Commissioners meeting, with the award to soon follow after that, after it's been reviewed. So at this point, I would like to ask for a motion to be able to advertise this and get this out. And if there are any comments from the commissioners or anything else that we want to change, we can put that out in a revised notice to bidders over the next couple of weeks. But this gives them about 5 weeks to review the project. This is a pretty substantial project. It's about 4.6 miles, a little short of 4.6 miles. So it's a substantial project with 2 pretty heavy lifts.
I make a motion that we go ahead and advertise.
With a motion on the floor to pursue advertisement as has been laid out here, is there a second? One more call for a second.
It's Norm's district, and there is a chance that we can make corrections, it sounds like.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I just have a problem second some when we didn't even have a chance to review it, Tommy. I hate
Understood.
to be like that, but I'll go ahead and second the motion since it's Lawrence District and he has, made the motion.
Motion to approve has been made and seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor of adoption signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries 3-0.
Okay, to your point though, we do have about $1 million left in our budget for paving that has not been even allocated, so there's plenty of money there. The second item was something that was just brought to me today. This was something I brought up last meeting, the vac truck, the vac trailer. We've talked about it for future meetings that it'll be coming up. There was a supplier that has one available. He actually has 3 that are available now. And he would like to start a contract with us to get us one at about $46,000. The receipt you have now is $49,000, and it does include a tax that won't be there for us. So it's about $46,000. The estimates that we previously got were $70,000, and we are gonna have this in our budget for next year anyway. The one caveat to this is we don't have line money allocated yet from the council. However, we do have budget available that we can move in the LRS. I would like to move forward with a contract with them pending future fund allocation from the council. They are willing to work with us knowing that they can get paid. And if it comes at the council meeting that they say no, that we can't reallocate those funds, then they absolutely understand, and they will sell it to another vendor that they have ready as well. But this is them offering us a much better price at a much sooner time than we had previously planned. So I'd like to move forward, I request a motion to move forward, and the contract price with the caveat that we can relinquish that with no damage to us if we do not get the funds reallocated in the July meeting.
I'll just ask a question on just the devil's advocate question, not reflecting what I may or may not do, but is there any harm in us from a deal standpoint of price or other contract provisions that, you know, to where we couldn't execute this at our next meeting once we have funding, or?
Well, it's more of an urgency of waiting for, to let them know that yes, we are going to pursue this contract. So if we do want to wait that extra 2 weeks, they can't guarantee that that one would be there. But if he would move forward with us with this contract right now, in the next few days with this one, they would hold this one for us and actually ship it to us as soon as we got approval.
Is there anything in writing there that stating that he acknowledges that it's pending council approval?
This is just a quote, so there's nothing in writing saying that actually it would be with that. So we wouldn't actually sign this until this is going with the paperwork, getting that, and then at the next meeting we'd come in to sign. And in that paperwork it would state that this would be pending council approval. We just saw it as a savings of over $20,000.
So if I'm following right, you're really looking for approval of the quote, which is all this is. This doesn't even have a line for signature.
Correct.
So you would like approval of the quote pending funding approval from the council, and then we can execute a contract.
Correct. That is correct.
I'm not comfortable with that personally, I mean,